Straight out of the beautiful Missouri Ozarks, it's PID Radio. Welcome. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert, and welcome to our humble bunker, our back bedroom. One of these days, very soon, we're going to have a studio in the barn.
Yes.
Because of your help. Many of you have helped out with the Build Barn Better project, and we are now in a position where we're just a few weeks away from phase 1 ignition.
That's right. The task that must be complete before then is Derek sorting through the boxes out there.
But you're doing it every evening. You go out there and you get some more done, and you've discovered a few things. And
yeah, some interesting stuff. Lots of donation stuff that will be going to local charities, things that we no longer need, things that my mother no longer needs, and so cleaning those out and then making room to begin insulating, cleaning and
electrifying,
yes.
Yeah.
So
HVACing. It's going to be great.
Yes, we are working on moving in that direction, and progress is being made. So was out there last night working through some things, found some fun things. I found a plaque that my sister and I gave to my dad on his 50th birthday back in 1985.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, like an award. Serving humanity for half a century. And
I love that.
Sandy and I will definitely want to save that.
Absolutely, I love that. And things like that are why you're going through all of these boxes. There's nothing out there. There's some furniture out there, some knickknacks and all sorts of things, but we don't need those. Neither does your mom. So it's only those personal things that we're taking out.
So making sure that we don't toss anything out like that. And boy, some things now that would be considered real artifacts, like so many cassette tapes, so many VHS tapes, a couple of VHS players. So
yeah, that's sort of that retro kind of stuff. There's a market for that.
Yeah. Well, we have
not that we plan on. No, we'll just donate it, and if a used goods store wants to take it and sell it, there's a great place nearby us that they sell things at a very, very low price, sort of like a Goodwill, but all of their proceeds go to support their food bank.
Right, and that has really been needed over the last few years, especially during COVID when the economy was more or less shut down.
Yeah, so we're going to take as many things as we can over that they can take.
Right.
Because their inventory space is sort of limited.
Yeah, and even they don't want the VHS tapes.
Strangely enough, no, they may actually be, we'll see where they go. But before we get started, I want to remind you of a couple things. One is download our app.
Absolutely. iOS, Android, Amazon, Kindle Fire.
Cute.
Absolutely. It brings all of our content right to you, and all of that is hosted on the servers of a Christian company, the developers of the app called Subsplash. They do the apps for many of our partners and friends in ministry, like Skywatch TV.
And they charge a very minimal fee.
Right.
It's amazing compared to what other app developers.
Oh my goodness.
It's so low compared to it. Yeah.
I priced out the cost of servers for video content, as we were looking for alternatives to YouTube once it became obvious that YouTube was beginning to crack down on ministries like Skywatch TV, which did get pulled off. It's back now. The main show is back, 5 and 10, just because of what I talk about. We've not even bothered.
No.
We get yanked. Anyway, Subsplash has not shown any inclination whatsoever to tell us what we can and can't say. So
no, not at all.
You will find many of our friends also with apps on Subsplash. L.A. Marzulli, Prophecy Watchers, Skywatch TV, of course. And
they're so responsive. There have been a couple of times where there's been a glitch and you contacted them within minutes. They're on it.
The app is really useful. It's got a Bible module on there with several different translations, and you can have it speak to you. So if you're traveling somewhere, you can run the audio from your phone or tablet through your car's sound system. You can have it, just listen to scripture while you're going, or listen to our audio versions, because all of the video content, obviously the audio content is audio only, but the video content, you can also have an audio only app or option.
Right, if you want to listen in the car, or if you have bandwidth to choose, it really is a good way to go. The other thing I want to remind you of is, we're going to talk more about Build Barn Better in a minute, but I want to thank a couple of people. Many of you send us cards of encouragement, and boy, I tell you what, they just mean so much to us. Our good friend Lynn, who's going to be moving out here soon, she just recently sent us a wonderful card of encouragement. Libby, who sends us a card quite often.
Oh, God bless Libby.
And Mary Alex, who sent us a nice, lovely, encouraging letter from Japan, along with some gorgeous Japanese greeting cards.
Right.
So thank you for all of those things. Thank you for thinking of us. You can always mail things to us at P.O. Box 78, Crane, Missouri 65633. Also, speaking of addresses and things like that, if you have ever tried to call the Gilbert House store, you'll notice that maybe you'd have trouble getting through. I kept listening for the messages for months. I haven't found any messages that weren't spam. We now know why.
Yeah, it's because I typed in the wrong number.
Oh, that's okay, honey. Your fingers sometimes just say, "No, I don't want these numbers. I want these."
Yeah.
But we all do that. So it's been corrected. I verified it by calling it from my phone and then using that phone to call my phone. It's just another phone that we've got on the desk.
Yeah, it was a line that we picked up for my mother to use, but Mom is just at an age where managing a cell phone is just not.
It's a very simple phone.
It's a simple flip phone, so that has become the official store phone for the Gilbert House Ministries.
But it explains
store.
why I could never find any messages.
Nobody's
on there.
calling us. Well, I guess that means nobody's having any problems with the store.
Now, mind you, if you do call, the odds of us actually picking up are very slim because I'm only in that office when I'm preparing the shipments.
Right.
And that's 3 times a week for like 10 minutes. So if you do call and you need to reach us, just leave a message. And I check that phone several times a day.
Yeah.
And again, nothing is ever there.
Well, as we said, now we know why. Sharon
now we know
corrected
why.
my mistake, and so now the correct phone number is there.
And of course, there's an email address on there on the at the store if you need to reach us. Contact information.
So we thank you for using the store. We've been very blessed by that, and we're in the process of creating some new content. I'm working through the video to catalog what we brought back from Israel. Thankfully, we got it all on external drives. Last time, back in 2019, we just thought, okay, iCloud. It is so easy. We'll just let it sync to the iCloud every night at the hotel.
And it seemed like a great idea, didn't it?
Except that getting it back from the iCloud was slower than uploading it to the iCloud. So it took literally 2 months for me to download everything again. This time we got it all.
Here's the hilarious thing about that. iCloud, yes, but at the same time, I had one of the larger iPads with me, and I thought, okay, well, this has got, I don't know, it's either a terabyte or 2 terabytes of storage, and I thought, well, we can, just save stuff on there. Not realizing until we got home that I had clicked to keep the sort of, what am I trying to say? Maximize storage. So it was uploading the actual videos, and all you got was a little image saying, here's a video, but you had to download it again to actually have it. So yeah, we fooled ourselves.
Yeah. But anyway, we got it on the external drives now. So anyway, I'm going through just to make sure we know what we've got. We'll sit down. We'll record the voice tracks here in the next few weeks. And there will be
Maybe
videos.
This fall. Yeah.
Videos of the tour and also of our special expedition, shall we say, to find the Valley of the Shadow of Death.
Yeah, boy. And don't forget, next spring, Timothy Alberino is going to be our co-host for the tour. So anybody who loves Tim Alberino, and who doesn't?
Oh, yeah.
And now's your chance to go tour Israel with him.
Yeah. Believe it or not, for all of the world travels that he has undertaken, he's never been to Israel.
He's never been to Israel.
We're happy that we can repay him for bringing us with him to see the tombs of the giants in Sardinia back in 2018.
Absolutely. It is the least we can do. So anyway, there's all of that. Well, what's on the docket for today?
Well, financial Armageddon.
What?
Oh, yes. We are facing, according to the media, so we can say without fear of contradiction that this is absolutely true. You can see I'm wearing my sarcastic face.
Yes, you are. Yesterday, because you only have a very short window to discuss news of the day on 5 and 10. Yesterday, I was talking to you and I said that you might want to have a special or some sort of dedicated episode where all you do is talk about the economic distress that the U.S. is in right now, and exactly who do we owe money to?
Yeah.
What's this national debt thing?
Why has this become the big story in the corporate media? Well, it seems every year, but right now it's more than ever because you've got a Republican-led House of Representatives, and according to the United States Constitution, the House of Representatives controls the purse strings, the Ways and Means Committee. Very powerful because it decides what gets spent on what.
Mm-hmm.
or how much gets spent on.
They say
on
no
what.
way. It's the no ways.
Yeah, and
no
we
means.
and we mean it.
Yeah.
Well,
but yeah, it's all over the news right now, and I don't think that, frankly, I have my head wrapped around it. So give us a little 101 on
yeah,
that.
the media sorts of puts it out there, as they do with all of our political wrangling, as though it's a sporting event. Who's winning? The polls are showing that Republicans are up 3 this week. Whatever. It's a sideshow.
That's exactly what it is. It's sleight of hand. They don't want us to see what's really going on.
Yeah, look at other things that are going on, but we will, just so we understand where the United States is and how it's being presented to us compared to what's true, or at least as true as we can determine through the open source information that we have access to. We don't have secret sources or anything like that. The official United States debt is now measured at about $31 trillion, just shy of $31 trillion. The debt ceiling is a limit imposed on the United States Treasury by the Constitution, which allows Congress to still have some control over what the Treasury Department is spending.
Right.
If and when the federal government, which issues debt in the form of bonds, United States Treasury bonds,
right,
and other bond-like assets that are inflation adjusted. Okay, but to keep it simple, just say in the form of Treasury bonds. So when the United States government needs to pay bills because we have committed to spending more money than we're taking in, lots more money than we are taking in, the government will sell treasuries and people will buy them. Investors will buy them. Other nations will buy them. In some cases, even the federal government itself buys its own debt.
I want to stop you for a second and just explain what a bond is.
It is a certificate that pays out interest on an annual basis. It has a maturity date set at some point in the future.
But it's technically you're lending money.
Right, for a specific period of time in exchange for a set rate of interest.
And so when the U.S. defaults on that, it means they can't pay the interest?
Well, when you say that, are you talking about paying the bonds or paying its...
Right, because you're seeing the U.S. is about to default on its debt.
Okay. No, that would not necessarily mean not able to pay bonds. It may mean that it can't pay the road contractor that just repaved Interstate 80 or something.
Oh, okay.
So we've borrowed money and we've committed to making these payments for various and sundry things. We can't pay the company that's supplying the bullets to the United States Army.
Or to Ukraine.
Well, yeah, or whatever. I mean, there are bills that come due every month. Electric bills for government buildings, salaries for soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, things like that the United States is obligated to pay every single month. And in order to finance that, because we're not taking in as much tax revenue as we need to make those payments, the government raises extra money by selling these treasuries. Give us this money for 3 years. We'll pay you 4% interest, and then we'll pay you back the bond at the end of that period when it matures. And so there are people who look at this as a very low-risk investment because the United States has never defaulted on its debt obligations, which again can mean refusing to pay off those treasury bills that it's issued. What's going on right now is that because the debt ceiling, the amount that the Treasury is legally allowed to issue in the form of treasuries, debt, is not enough to cover what we owe when certain bills begin coming due the first 2 weeks of June. The government may start defaulting on certain things, like, again, it could be anything. You know, the vehicles that the United States government has purchased for park rangers or whatever. Okay.
Gosh, we might not pay the president's salary. Oh,
yeah, no,
ouch.
That's
never going to happen.
That's not going to happen. So that is why the United States issues treasuries to finance the debt, and because the United States government has been seen as absolutely reliable, there's always a demand for U.S. treasuries. what's happening right now is that the demand for bonds is higher because the interest rates being paid by banks is so low that people are pulling money out of banks and putting them into, putting them into money market funds, but also into treasuries, because they're paying more interest than you can get. You get like a 0.1% interest rate when you put your money in a savings account at a bank. You can get 4 or 5% from a money market fund. Why would you keep your money in the bank if you don't need the money right away for a checking account? And that's why you're seeing a run on banks. That's a whole separate issue that we won't even get into. So anyway, the federal government's debt, which has really exploded in the last few years, it really began during it really began ramping up in the around 1980. Total debt in the United States was about $3.2 trillion in 1980. It is now 10 times that, roughly, here in 2023. That doesn't even include the unfunded liabilities like Medicare and Social Security, things that the government is on the hook to pay to people because of promises made. The value of the unfunded liabilities is estimated at right now at about $46 trillion. So the U.S. debt, more accurately, is closer to $77 trillion than the $31 trillion.
Oh, the whole world doesn't make that.
Not in the course of a year, no. U.S. GDP is, last time I looked, it was somewhere around 19 trillion. I think it's a little higher than that now.
Are you getting those numbers from Shadow Stats?
No, I'm using the official numbers, Shadow Stats numbers for, and I don't know that they actually track federal debt. Shadow Stats is a very interesting site, shadowstats.com. If you want to see what the actual inflation rate is compared to the official rate, and there's a difference because the U.S. government in 1980 and again around 1990 changed the way inflation is calculated to make it appear to be not quite as bad as it really is, which also helps the government when they sell treasuries that are indexed to inflation, because inflation is going up. According to John Williams at Shadow Stats, although inflation has been falling, the official rate is running at what are they saying? About 5%. He puts it at closer to 8.5 or 9. And that was the way it was written in 1990. If you used the way inflation was calculated up to 1980, the current rate of inflation is closer to 13%. So more than double.
So I'm looking at the website too. You're looking at the blue line?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and the blue line on that top chart is the 1990 based inflation. Scroll down a little bit to 1980 based inflation, and that shows the way it used to be calculated prior to 1980. But debt is a whole nother thing, and the United States government has just committed to paying out way more than we take in, and our elected officials seem to be of the opinion that debt really doesn't matter. We can just keep printing money because we're the United States government. In fact, a congressman was being critical in a hearing the other day of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. It's like you just can't create money out of thin air. And then he said, and of course there are some who'll say that the United States government does it, and maybe we do, but we're the United States government. In other words, it's okay when the U.S. government does it, but not when anyone else does it.
Okay, a couple things. One of them is that when you and I were talking about this morning, you know what? If we just recorded our conversations all day long, it would be a 24/7. Well, not 24/7. I'm asleep, so are you. It would be snoring during those little 8 hours or whatever. But we talk like this all day.
Right.
This morning, I was asking you, to whom do we owe this debt?
Right.
Who holds these T-bills?
And I had to look this up because I was under the impression that China held the majority of our debt.
Yes, so was I.
That is not the case. Private borrowers, in other words, we call private borrowers private citizens.
Other than a country.
The public.
Yeah.
Mom and pop investors buying treasury bills. Mom and dad did this for me years ago. They bought 15-year, 10-year treasuries or something.
My dad bought them through his government bonds when he worked.
We own, meaning we the public, own the majority of the United States debt. Out of the 31 trillion, almost 25 trillion is held by investors.
So they owe us money.
Not sovereign debt funds. Yeah, but they can only pay off. You can't just cash them in at any moment. You have to wait till they mature. You can sell them and resell them as investments, and people do. About $7 trillion is owned by. Let me back that up. Let's say debt held by the public can include investors that like the sovereign wealth funds of other nations. So the Chinese can. Oh. And China's not even the largest holder of U.S. government treasuries. Japan is. China has been selling off treasuries here in recent years. China is number 2. The UK is number 3. China, but again, that only makes up about 25% of the outstanding U.S. Treasury debt, is what's held by other nations. Mm-hmm. So if China were to sell off what it owns, that would amount to maybe 6 or 7% of our debt. Intergovernmental holdings, this surprised me. That's about roughly equal to what the United States government owns in its own treasuries. So how does that work? Again, I had to educate myself on this this morning.
Isn't that a Ponzi scheme?
It kind of is. The Social Security and Medicare funds, especially Social Security. Social Security takes in more money in taxes than it spends on Social Security in any given month. But rather than put the money into, to use the infamous words of Al Gore, a lock box, that money is then used to buy treasuries. So that excess money buys treasury bonds, and the money then is transferred to the United States Treasury, which sold the bonds. Then the Treasury can take that money and put it into the general fund, which means it can be spent on other government stuff. It's a way of... It's an accounting trick to take money that's intended for Social Security and spend it on whatever, sending money to Ukraine.
Yep.
And I was like, wait, why did I not know this? I'm 61 years old, pretty well read, good reading comprehension. How did I not know this? This is, wow. I'm 4 years away, allegedly, from being able to start collecting Social Security. I don't anticipate ever collecting a dime because I just don't think it'll be there.
I haven't even applied for it because, honestly, there are strings attached. And
yeah.
Look, there's so little that I would get. It doesn't make any sense for me to do it. And
no, it wouldn't.
Have you tell me what I can and can't earn.
Right. So that is how money that is intended for Social Security gets funneled into the rest of the government spending scheme through Treasury bills. The Treasury Department has also, or rather the Federal Reserve Bank, which is the privately owned, federally chartered, but privately owned bank, buys treasuries as well as a means of manipulating the economy. They've done this to keep interest rates artificially low. Because to attract investors, if there aren't enough people investing in your treasuries, you need to raise the interest rate that you're offering to make them more attractive. Well, to keep things artificially low and to keep the economy loose and running, the Federal Reserve Bank back in 2008, during the subprime mortgage crisis, began meddling directly in the economy through the purchase of treasuries and through the purchase of other securities. In fact, the Bank of Japan does this as well, investing directly in their stock market to prop things up.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. Well, if you want to know more about the Federal Reserve, there's a wonderful book written by G. Edward Griffin called The Creature from Jekyll Island. And it's all about how it was established and who was behind it and the reason why it was established. Didn't you interview him years ago?
I did, and that is on our app, actually. That was one of the recent additions to our app. I think, where am I finding? I'm going to bring up our app here so I can find
Griffin, maybe?
Yeah, I think it is one of the prophecy interviews.
You did it at Prophecy in the News, I think, years ago.
There's a category called the Prophecy Interviews on our app, and you'll find it there from the 2011 Future Congress, July 22nd of 2011.
It was Future Congress. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Boy, I loved that one. That was fun.
So, a number of interviews there, by the way, including early interviews with Tom Horn, Chuck Missler, Noah Hutchings.
Yes.
Chris White, Chris Pinto, and G. Edward Griffin was one of those. So you can find that interview with G. Edward Griffin at our app. Very informative. So the bottom line is this. The government is now negotiating, the White House, with Kevin McCarthy, who's the Republican Speaker of the House, to try to negotiate an increase in the debt ceiling. The United States government has basically gone out and said, we're going to buy this. Give me some of those. Give me a bunch of that. And basically committing to spending all this money without the means to actually spend it, assuming that Congress would do what Congress has always done some 78 times now since it began, which is just vote to raise the debt ceiling, thus authorizing the U.S. Treasury to issue more Treasury bonds to raise more money to pay the bills.
Now, here's something interesting. Hearing all of that craziness, now think about it spiritually. Today, you and I are going to record another Unraveling Revelation, and we're getting to that point where we're going to be talking about the whore of Babylon and all of the various, aspects of the puppet masters that she's, really pulling the strings on. There are a lot of human beings that think they're the ones ruling the world. They're not. In the book of Revelation, and you and I are going to talk about this on Unraveling Revelation, but also we're going to relate it back to, believe it or not, the prophet Nahum, Nahum. And he talks, it's a judgment, a dream, a vision that he has about the judgment of Nineveh. Now, why was Nineveh singled out? Always ask yourself that. When the Lord has gives a vision to a prophet and says, okay, here's the doom for this particular group of people. Why them? Because there are a lot of evil groups of people worldwide. So I know that these were pretty much ones that are around Israel, and they were being used at various times to help correct Israel as they strayed away from Yahweh. There is a temple. You and I looked at the map that was created by one of the early excavators there in what used to be Nineveh. And it is shaped, the wall around it is shaped like a sandal.
Yeah.
That's an imitation of Jerusalem.
It is very interesting that they chose to make it in that shape.
Yeah, I know. We need to talk to Aaron about that, but I'm discussing Nahum and the oracle against Nineveh because in the palace area on that map, and we'll put this in the notes, or Derek will, in the palace area, you see in the king's area 2 temples. There are lots of gates to various gods, but there are 2 temples in that area, which means that these are special deities. One is to Ishtar, that's Inanna. This is the deity that I believe is running the world, the whore of Babylon. The other one is Nabu.
Yeah. Nabu is...
He's the one that's been hiding in plain sight.
An interesting deity. The god of scribes, the god who tracked accounts.
Exactly.
The god who kept the ledgers.
Yes, the one who looks at all of the debt created by the world, willingly putting debt on the backs of their people and affecting our lives. Now, of course, in the book of Revelation, we see, and the merchants of the earth weep and mourn for her, since no one buys their cargo anymore. Cargo of gold, silver, jewels, pearls, fine linen, purple cloth, silk, scarlet cloth, all kinds of scented woods. All the things that are listed in Revelation 18 are items that were considered precious back then. They were precious, but it also includes horses and chariots, that's for war, and slaves, that is, human souls. The human trafficking that's going on right now, the way the human souls are being bought and sold, stealing our free will, the desire to eventually fool us through grooming. Frankly, we're all being groomed in some way using propaganda, but there's also literal grooming going on. And we will talk more about that after the break.
We've recorded a lot of video over the last 8 years, and we're truly thankful that so many of you have been blessed by our teachings, presentations, our travel augmentaries of our tours through Israel. But sending videos to other parts of the world can get expensive. So we've now made all of our video content available on demand. Stream our video in full HD with instant access at gilberthouse.org/video. And during the months of May and June, you can save 20% with promo code VIDEO20 at checkout. That's VIDEO20. Video on demand for as little as $3 for 7 days access and 20% off with promo code VIDEO20. But if you prefer DVDs, that promo code works for you too. Log on to gilberthouse.org/store, use VIDEO20 at checkout, and save 20% on all DVDs. 20% off all streaming video and DVDs with promo code VIDEO20 at gilberthouse.org. Welcome back to PID Radio. I'm Derek Gilbert.
I'm Sharon Gilbert, and we teased, of course, before the break that we were going to talk about human trafficking, which is such a heavy topic, and we will get to that. But before we do, I want to remind everybody, Build a Barn Better, what that's all about. The fact is that we have a big old barn that's just holding stuff.
When we say barn, don't think traditional wood barn with
I would
horses
love it
and
if
cattle.
it actually looked like that.
Yeah. No,
but it's just a steel barn.
It is a pole barn or a steel shop building. It's on a concrete slab, which is
very
amazing
nice building.
Because, yes, that concrete would cost more than our whole project, I think, right now.
Oh, easily.
So we're blessed that it's already there. For 8 years, it's been nothing but storage, just overflow. Don't want it in the house. Let's just go stick it in a box and stick it out in the barn. Well, we are we're using every available space in our home for office space and shipping space. So Lord, should we take this building that you provided for us and
we wanted to do this for years, and finally last fall the Lord said, okay, now.
Yeah, you're busy enough. Go do this. So that's the project there. We again are in the process now of just sorting everything on this side of the barn. Goes to basically the dump. This side is all donation material. Once that's cleaned out, then the contractors can get in. We've already got estimates on cleaning it up. There's some holes in the exterior walls that need to be replaced, sealed. The panels replaced, the siding replaced, insulation, electric, HVAC. Once that's done, then we can start setting up some
cleaning
workspaces.
And sealing the concrete because it's got all sorts of oil and stuff on it.
Right. But once we get past all of that, then we can actually set up some workspaces out there and begin the process of moving the equipment from here out to there. And we are deeply, deeply thankful for your assistance.
You guys have been so generous with us. We know it's confirmation to us that the Lord really is behind this project. So thank you. We do not know how to say thank you enough times. But you guys, every time we see one of those donations, we just cry.
It is a true blessing.
And for those
we just look forward to seeing what the Lord has in store for us and how He wants that space used.
Yes, and we covet your prayers.
Yes.
We covet your prayers, not just for the barn project, but for our travels and our books and just that we would honor the Lord in everything we do. My prayer every day is, Lord, help us to lift up Jesus, crucified, risen, and coming again.
Amen.
The world needs that.
Amen.
The world really needs that. Well, right now, as we said before the break, there is a lot of grooming going on, not just grooming us so that we will believe the lie, but also grooming young people, not just to believe a lie, but to traffic them, to convince them to go to a certain place, and then they are stolen or just pulled off the street or told, hey, you get to go to this great land and it's going to be rich and this and that. And when they get here, when this 10-year-old or 12-year-old or whatever gets here, he or she is then sold off for who knows what.
That was one of the more horrific aspects of the southern border crisis, which really isn't getting enough attention. It's bad enough that in Chicago, I mean the flood, the numbers is bad enough that on the south side of Chicago, which is a predominantly African American, people are protesting because the city isn't doing a good job in providing basic services in Chicago. Chicago's very unsafe. At least certain neighborhoods are very unsafe right now. It's sad to see, but the neighborhood I grew up in, which was a working class, blue collar, very stable neighborhood. We moved after 12 years of living there. We were still the new people on the block, but it is now one of the most dangerous. More people shot per year in Chicago, in my old neighborhood, than just about anywhere else. But the people there are protesting, saying, look, you're not taking care of the people who live here. Why are you volunteering as a sanctuary city? I saw a story, an image from one of the Chicago police precincts of the entire lobby of the police station taken up with migrants with nowhere to go, sleeping on the floor of the police station in Chicago.
This is a tragedy.
Chicago is nowhere near the Mexican border.
No, but they're being bussed up there.
They're being bussed up there. The state of Texas is
how many are getting lost along the way?
Well, that is the thing, because the one, again, that is bad enough, that you just overwhelming the services of cities like New York. The city of New York has declared an emergency, so we can't take any more. And trying to
they're supposed to be a sanctuary city.
Right. And they're trying to blame Governor Abbott in Texas. They're blaming President Biden.
Excuse me, when you say you're a sanctuary city, it means that, hey, come on and come up here.
Right. This is what it means. It's not, if you're going to make that promise, remember, it's not always going to be easy. But according to a whistleblower who formerly worked at the Department of Health and Human Services, testifying to a House subcommittee, this is a couple of weeks ago already, and the New York Times ran this expose, which really surprised me. I mean, when you're in the White House as a Democrat and you've lost the New York Times and CNN, you're in trouble. New York Times reporting on this says something like 350,000 unaccompanied minors have crossed the southern border since Joe Biden took office.
Oh my goodness.
Now, the Brits are complaining that they're on the verge this year of hitting 1 million net immigration. I thought, with 1 million in a year, wow, that's a lot. No, that's 1 million over all of the time that they started tracking the statistics in the UK.
Oh, I thought it was just for this year.
No, because they're looking at maybe getting 50,000 crossing this year, but that'll push them up over a total of 1 million or something. Now, that number may be wrong for the year, but I mean, it's a cumulative number. The fact is, here in the United States, we've had a couple of million just since Joe Biden took office. But of those 350,000 unaccompanied minors, 85,000, according to the New York Times, have been lost.
85,000?
That's about a quarter of the kids who've crossed the border as unaccompanied minors. They have dropped off the radar. Health and Human Services doesn't know where they are. And this whistleblower, talking to the House subcommittee, said that what's happening is they are brought into the country. Health and Human Services, Customs and Border Protection, they will take them and then deliver them to a sponsor who, according to this whistleblower, oftentimes is himself a member of a criminal gang, a trafficking organization. And these kids are then taken, they disappear.
Oh my goodness.
And God only knows what they're doing. There was a story during
trafficking in the souls of men.
Well,
Slaves.
Yes, exactly. Now, I remember the first year that we started doing Skywatch TV, that we partnered with Skywatch TV, reporting on I think it was 2016, a story that came out during Obama's last year in office, that authorities had raided an egg farm in Ohio and found minor children who had crossed the border illegally, most of whom didn't speak English, working at an egg farm, essentially as slaves. They'd been brought into the country, trafficked to Ohio, which, again, if you look at a map, you'll see it's not on the border with Mexico.
No.
And were working for slave wages to repay the gangs and the traffickers who'd brought them into the country.
Oh, my goodness. And
Human
I bet they
slavery.
do not know this up front.
No.
When these traffickers call themselves coyotes, which is an interesting term, given that coyote in many of the cultures in the Southwest is a deity who's a trickster.
Yeah, significant, and maybe in ways they don't even intend. The whistleblower's name is Tara Lee Rodas, Rodas, and I will put a link to the Fox News article in the show notes so that you can see what this story is and see that I'm just not making this up. She said that the United States is essentially taking part in a child trafficking operation. She said, a quote from the article, she testified to the existence of, quoting now, sophisticated network of child migrant smuggling into forced labor and other forms of slavery, use your imagination, is calling on Congress to act to crack down on the U.S. role in that network. The hearing, the Biden border crisis, exploitation of unaccompanied alien children, was held by the House Judiciary Subcommittee on Immigration Integrity, Security, and Enforcement, and included Health and Human Services whistleblower Tara Lee Rodas as a witness.
Oh, yes, I'm looking at the article about her right now. She is quoted as saying, "I thought I was going to help place children in loving homes. Instead, I discovered that children are being trafficked through a sophisticated network that begins with being recruited, home countries, smuggled to the U.S., and it goes on and on." Right. It's well worth your time to read it.
Yeah. According to the Fox News article, and this is using statistics from Customs and Border Protection, the number of unaccompanied alien children who arrived at the border swelled from 33,239 in 2020, which is bad enough, to 146,000 in 2021. So multiply by a factor of 4 at least. What changed between 20 and 2021? Joe Biden became president, was sworn into office.
Yes.
152,000 in fiscal 2022. So far in fiscal year 2023, there were more than 70,000 encounters of UACs, unaccompanied alien children. So add that together, that's roughly 370,000, of which, according to the New York Times, 85,000 have just dropped off the map.
You can watch her entire testimony on YouTube, and it's in the article that I'm looking at, but we'll make sure that you have a link to that. Explain something for me that's definitely part of this whole problem. Title 42, explain what it is and what the sunset, the repeal of this law means.
Title 42 was a regulation used by the Trump administration to justify keeping migrants in Mexico during the Trump years. It was repealed, Biden wanted to just stop using it, but the White House was sued and a judge required him to keep it in place. Title 42 used public health grounds as justification for, during the COVID pandemic, to justify keeping the migrants out. It's like, look, we don't know what your health status is. We don't know whether you've been vaccinated, so stay out.
Is that the real reason he stopped the emergency condition for
Well, no,
COVID?
I don't think so.
He kept kicking that can down the road, saying, "No, I'm not going to repeal it yet."
Yeah, the COVID emergency officially ended this past week as well,
exactly.
Which is why Title 42 expired.
That's why I'm saying.
Right.
That would have been tied to that.
I think because the World Health Organization finally said, nope, there's no more pandemic. It was difficult for them to justify it. The United States was like one of the last nations on earth to require people coming in from outside the U.S. to show proof of a COVID vaccine.
Right.
Which is nuts. But
I know.
When you consider who pays for our elected officials, you can guess. It's a 2-syllable word that rhymes with smiser.
Oh.
It's not really that surprising. It's not really that surprising. So anyway, that finally ended. When Title 42 ended, migrants were preparing to surge across the border. And in fact, they started doing it earlier in the week because there was another, and it's really funny because you have to laugh. Otherwise, you just start throwing things at the wall. It was funny to see how the corporate media reported on this. The Biden administration invoking a regulation to, blah, 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 that will go into effect as soon as Title 42 expires. Basically requiring people demanding sanctuary here, saying that they want to be, that they're refugees from our home country. If you crossed through other countries to get to our southern border, like Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, and you didn't apply for refugee status in one of those nations first, you can't come in. Get out. Well, this was one of the rules that Biden eliminated on his first day in office. Trump had that rule in place and was using it. We had the lowest level during 2020. The lowest part of it, I guess, was COVID. But the fact is that between that and what sections of the wall did get built, there was less illegal immigration during Trump than there had been for decades. And Joe Biden reversed that with a few strokes of his pen on January 21st of 2021. So do away with that, do away with that, do away with that. Suddenly, boom, that's why you've got this sudden surge in people crossing the southern border. But now, because he's got Democrats who are squawking, like Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, like the city of Chicago.
Oh, I know. They're overrun.
Yes. And it's because Governor Abbott of Texas, yes, the Democrat governor of Arizona, who should be a Republican, but that's another story, all complaining and saying this is Biden's fault. With the presidential election coming up, now Biden is finally at least trying to find ways to make it look like he's doing something.
Without doing something.
Without really doing something.
Yeah.
So, well, because what they're doing is, as I was hearing a report from Texas on the Glenn Beck radio show yesterday, whenever people in Texas see these big white buses with blacked out windows, they know there's another busload of 100 migrants going somewhere in the United States, we know not where. And that's what's happening. They're flying them into places like Chattanooga and, who knows? It's just all over the country. And it is...
trading in the souls of men.
Trading in the souls of men. Sad to say, but the United States government, whether intentionally or no, is participating in the wholesale trafficking of humans.
I would argue that most of the leaders of the world are now involved in implementing Inanna's vision for the New World Order. These individuals may not realize what they're really doing. We have to remember that Jesus himself forgave those who crucified him, forgave the human beings that put him there. We want to throw things not at the wall, we want to throw things at the politicians. At the very least, we want to hurl our language at them and chew them out. But it's a spiritual thing. If you forget about the warfare that's going on behind the humans, you will miss it entirely. And that's why most of the politicians of the world, they don't understand why things happen. Because they don't see the spirits behind it.
Exactly. And that's really what's going on here. We are witnessing spiritual warfare in real time. We are seeing these children who are being used, abused, and broken, which perpetuates this cycle of evil. And so we need to remember that they are just the human shields behind which these principalities and powers are operating.
And it's nothing new. It's been going on since the very, very earliest days of humanity. It was going on pre-flood.
Circling back to Nineveh.
Yeah, exactly. I was about to go there, and I was going to say that the Lord has brought judgment to those civilizations that behaved that way, and our day's coming.
Yeah.
And you can see what's going to happen by looking at Nineveh.
And what Babylon did as well, because they just adopted the Assyrian model when Nabopolassar and Nebuchadnezzar took down the Assyrian Empire. Hey, let's move into our conquered territories and let's take all of their important citizens and just deport them and put them in new places. It just uproot them, make them forget their history, and make them one of us.
One of the things that you and I are probably going to talk about when we record the Unraveling Revelation later today is who actually founded Nineveh.
Yeah. The other thing, and this opens up a whole nother level of understanding the Bible, is realizing that the name Babylon did not only apply to that city ruled by Nebuchadnezzar in the 6th century BC, founded by Shumu Abum in the 19th century BC or 18th century BC. It was applied to many of the great cities of ancient Mesopotamia, including and especially Nineveh.
Exactly. In fact, there is a well-respected archaeologist who believes that the Hanging Gardens that were so spectacular were not in what we would call Iraq, that section of Iraq near Baghdad.
Right.
They were actually in Nineveh.
Near Mosul. Yep. Mosul is just across the river from the site of ancient Nineveh. Yeah, Stephanie Daly is her name, and she is a very, very well-respected Assyriologist.
She has a documentary that you and I've watched it a couple of times now, that she logically shows you on the ground. She actually shows you the canals that were built and how they watered this. If you can picture a ziggurat, those were the Hanging Gardens. In other words, there was a an artificial mountain.
Right. And showed the possible mechanism by which water was elevated and then allowed to run down through those gardens. Yeah, think about that. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon weren't at Babylon.
Yeah,
well,
they may have actually been at Nineveh.
We made that case before that Babel was not at Babylon.
Right.
That the name applied to a different city. And she is the author of a paper. If it's available online, and I think it is, I will link to it if you want a deeper dive into this, how the name Babylon applied to other ancient cities, including Nineveh, which is part of her thesis on the Hanging Gardens, but it's also relevant to Eridu, which is where we believe the Tower of Babel was located. It's worth reading. And again, then it gets back to the prophecy of Nahum and the prophecy of the destruction of Babylon in the book of Revelation.
Yes.
Does it mean Babylon the city, or are we talking about any of these cities that operated as God gates?
Yes, exactly. And if you look at this outline of Nineveh, you will see quite a number of God gates. But there's only one that has those lamassu, and I'm trying to see, hold on.
Yeah, there was a gate of Sin, the moon god, to the north, the gate of Nergal, who was the god of the plague god. It was also connected to the netherworld, the equivalent of Apollo for the Greeks and Romans, and Resheph for the Canaanites. There was the gate of Ashur, which was the Assyrian version of Enlil and El.
It was the Nergal gate.
The Nergal gate. Okay.
Who's, Nergal is one of the psychopomps or gatekeeper of the underworld.
Right.
He's sort of like Osiris.
Resheph and Apollo.
So if you think of it that way, we've got these lamassu, which are the winged bulls, these creatures that are similar to what's described in Scripture as in the throne of God.
The cherubim, yeah.
The cherubim, exactly.
Winged bulls, but human-headed and with lion's paws.
They're not cute either. They're really scary-looking dudes.
Yep.
They were guarding, on either side, guarding the gate of Nergal, the keeper of the underworld. If that's true, then when you go through there, you're essentially entering the underworld. If that's his gate.
And interesting that was on the north side of the city. Interesting that the gate of Ashur was on the south side.
And the scene,
of the city.
If the map is true north at the top, scene was at about 10:30, 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Seeing the moon god. Yeah, it's a really interesting, and again, the temples that are marked on there, the only two temples that seem to be in the king's area were to Ishtar and Nabu.
And we argued that Nabu is the rider on the black horse in our book Giants, Gods, and Dragons, because he is the one who, as the god of scribes, the god of accountants, basically, was essentially the god of lawyers and bankers, the patron god of those who controlled the economy in ancient Babylon.
So you can see why he and Inanna would work together. She's controlling the warfare aspect, the society aspect as far as sexuality, and he's controlling the money.
The money and also the law. Whenever you needed to write up a contract, you had to go to a scribe, and that guild was protected by Nabu, who was Hermes to the Greeks and Mercury to the Romans.
And if you wanted to write a curse tablet.
Yeah.
Because writing itself.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that that's how the Hebrews did it. No, not at all. But even the Egyptians believed that their god, Thoth, I think, was their god of writing, who was the equivalent of Nabu, that he and all of the priests, the scribes who worked under him, it was a mystical vocation.
Yes.
And just writing down a word was magical. So you had to be really careful what you wrote.
The Egyptians had a really interesting practice they called execration texts, where they would write down the names of enemies on bits on pottery or on clay figurines that represented their enemies. Then they would curse them, and then they would smash the figurine or the pot, which then would bring the curse to be on the heads of their enemies.
Well, those curse tablets, they were still being used in ancient Rome. They would take a thin sheet of lead, and they would use a stylus, and they would write the curse. There was a form you had to use, an official curse form. Fill in the blank.
In triplicate.
Yes.
Submit one to the temple. One is your copy. The other one gets thrown into this big pile.
Yeah, and then you dedicated it. You pleaded with a god or goddess to carry it out. We don't necessarily buy into that these days, but I got to tell you, these gods and goddesses, they are still at war with one another and very much at war with the Lord God Almighty, their creator. Mm-hmm. Their creator.
They have the hubris to think that somehow they can win. But it may be that they know that they're doomed, and they just want to hurt God by taking as many of his children, the children of Adam and Eve, with them to destruction as they can when they go.
Speaking of those Lamassu, we've said this before, so if you've missed our mention of the Godzilla King of Monsters movie, you really need to watch it, because when you see his lair, it's guarded by Lamassu.
That was, and you got to watch carefully, because it's only for about 1 second that you get the glimpse as the submarine is going into this underground city, sort of like Cthulhu from the Lovecraft Cthulhu mythos, dead but dreaming at the bottom of the ocean.
Yes.
Sort of an Olympus, a lost civilization.
Was at the top of a ziggurat. You had to go up a lot of steps.
Right.
And I would love to get a better image of that. Sadly, there is no making of that film to show the CGI layout, but I would love to know how many steps were climbed.
Yeah, that would be interesting.
There's a lot.
Yeah. Interesting the way they have rebranded the Titans as the original and rightful rulers of Earth.
No, the Titans.
And that the Titans need to come back to reestablish balance, because we humans are an infection on the surface of Mother Gaia. So
sadly, there are a lot of humans that are buying into that. That whole idea, the 19th century idea of the Malthusian mathematical model of the world, that there's only so much land to feed people. And so that gave rise to Sir Francis Galton, who coined the term eugenics, as that's the true model of a supreme and pure human being. And so that was the goal.
Boy,
self-directed evolution.
Back in the late 70s when I was on the debate team in high school, Malthusian nightmare was one of the standard negative planks that we would bring out to our opponents' affirmative plans. Resolve, the United States should significantly change its foreign trade policy. Well, that's a really wide topic. But every time the affirmative team presented something that appeared to do well, it's like people will be fed and cared for, and I go, Malthus will overrun the carrying capacity of the earth and we're all going to die. And of course, when I was on the affirmative team and somebody used that against me, it's like, okay, who made you God to decide who gets to live and die? And that generally, carried that argument for us. But
okay, tell you what, we're going to line up everybody and every 10th one goes.
Yeah. Or, David lined them up and said 2 out of every 3, if you're a Moabite, of course. Yeah.
Well, decimation, that's where that word comes from. The Romans would kill every 10th one.
Yeah. So by contrast, they were a little more merciful than David was with the people of Moab.
Let's just praise the Lord God Almighty, because he is merciful, and he doesn't want any one of us, because these physical bodies that we're inhabiting right now, these are temporary. Praise the Lord, they are temporary.
Amen.
Otherwise, we would live forever in our sins. We don't want that.
No.
Not in this sinful, broken, imperfect body. I want to be in the perfect body that he's got waiting for me. And that is our goal, because if you know Christ as your Savior, then you have that promise. Who wouldn't want that?
The blessed
Instead
assurance.
Of, hey, I get to be uploaded to a computer and live forever.
Yeah.
Oh.
Blue screen of death means literally death.
Yes. Yeah.
There's all sorts of things that we could continue talking about for hours and hours.
But we're out of time.
News-wise, it was hilarious. I'll just comment on this very briefly. Donald Trump was on CNN this past week, which for some unknown reason... Oh, no, wait, we do know the reason. CNN's ratings are in the tank. They know that Trump brings ratings. His appearance on CNN has caused liberals' heads to explode. Why did they let him speak? Well, because he's news. He's a leading Republican candidate. Now, don't know if he's the best man for the job in 2024, but it is hilarious watching him just make liberals' heads explode.
I know. I want Boris Johnson back over in the UK. And if we could have Trump and Johnson at the same time again, that was just the best ever.
Yeah, the conservatives, the Tories in the UK are beginning to realize, well, Rishi's going to lead us to destruction in the polls.
Yes.
Boris could do a good... Yeah.
Remember when he gave his sort of swan song speech? He quoted Cincinnatus.
Cincinnatus.
Know your history.
Yeah. He was one who was made the tyrant of Rome, which basically means...
That's actually a position.
It was a position, yeah. The word has come to mean something different in English today than it meant back then. Time of emergency, Cincinnatus led Rome to victory. And then instead of hanging on to power, which he could have done because he was very popular, he said, thanks, but no thanks. I'm going back to my farm. And so he inspired a society of Cincinnati or Cincinnatus in the colonial period here in the United States.
And when things went south in Rome, they begged him to come back.
Yeah. And he did. But again, once the crisis was averted, he went back to his farm.
Mm-hmm.
And George Washington, interestingly, was a member of the Society of Cincinnatus.
Yes. So by invoking Cincinnatus, Boris was telegraphing, I know you're going to want me back.
Uh-huh. And I will come back and, save the United Kingdom and then retire back to my farm.
We'll just call him Bungee Boris. He just bounces back and forth.
Well,
so yeah, that would be
politically entertaining, but ultimately a distraction from our true mission, which is to make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit.
Exactly. And that doesn't mean go baptize the nation leader. It means, although that would be wonderful, it means every tongue and every tribe.
Mm-hmm.
You witness to everyone.
Right.
And you may not like that idea, but that's what we're called to do. Even if you don't like the person, you're to witness to him.
Amen.
And you can do that by living a life where you follow Christ.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest witness we have, is our life.
A lot of people only know, all they know of Jesus is what they see in the way we behave.
Exactly.
Which, sadly,
we
are often not good ambassadors for our King.
No, and that's exactly what we are. We are ambassadors for Christ. Mm-hmm. Now, left turn slightly. Who's on VFTB? Who's on first?
Tomorrow night on A View from the Bunker, it is Ali Siadatan, who is the founder of Think Again Productions. He produced a documentary film back in 2006 called UFOs, Gods, and... UFOs, Angels, and Gods, right? Let me see. Think Again Productions. Look, me bring that up again. UFOs, Angels, and Gods, which you can watch on YouTube. It includes L.A. Marzulli, Chuck Missler. This was a very early Christian response to the modern UFO phenomenon.
Do you know when you do a search for that, the very first hit that I got was your VFTB interview with him last year? Yeah.
Ali's got a wonderful testimony. So, and this is one of the cool things about our app, by the way. You can go to the app and search by speaker. We've made sure that whenever we've done an interview, we've tagged the name of the speaker there so you can find all of the appearances of, say, Michael Heiser, L.A. Marzulli, Tom Horn on our various programs within the app. Ali's was born in Iran. He is a Persian and raised Muslim, but he has accepted Jesus Christ. He has had the opportunity and the blessing to witness to his family and see many of them come to Christ as well. So fascinating man, deep thinker, and just a great conversation. And now living in Toronto, Canada. And he's got a mutual friend, the radio broadcaster up there, Richard Sirrett, who's had me on his program, The Conspiracy Show, a number of times. Mm-hmm. Richard broadcasts on one of the big Toronto radio stations, and he's a regular fill-in on Coast to Coast AM. But Ali is a friend of his. They go out for coffee fairly regularly.
Oh, that's cool.
Anyway, tomorrow night on A View from the Bunker.
But that, like I say, that the first hit that I got was VFTB Live, but it was the IMDb entry for it.
IMDb entry?
Yes. You have IMDb entries for all of your VFTBs, apparently.
Really?
Yes, A View from the Bunker from 2009.
IMDb is the Internet Movie Database. So I've got credits?
Apparently so. Is that not just the craziest?
Well,
A View from the Bunker 2009 to...
current day.
Still going, yeah.
Wow.
Let's
I didn't put
see.
it up there.
Well, I'm looking to see no cast listed.
Huh.
I'm not sure. 694 episodes.
They must really scrape the
I guess they've got some sort of a little AI
Scrape
that's out there, just
or something.
Sort of like those Roombas that go around your house.
Just
this little guy that's just going sucking up data
collecting
from all
everything.
over the place.
Wow.
Yeah, having a good time.
Who knew? So we got a couple of events to tell you about. In a month, we are going to be in Sparta, Missouri for His Call Ministries. We'll be doing a weekend on our research in Israel recently into the Valley of the Shadow of Death and why that matters as Christians. This is June 9, 10, and 11, Friday evening, Saturday, and then Sunday morning. Sparta, Missouri is between Springfield and Branson, so off US 65, south of Springfield. If you're in the Ozarks and you can make the trip, please join us. It'll be a kind of an intimate gathering because the facility can hold about 100 people.
Oh, it's such a beautiful, beautiful camp. It's the Finley River Ranch.
Mm-hmm. They're in the process of building an education center that they call the Glory Barn, but this will be a place then to hold events with more seating and a little easier. You know, the acoustics will be a little bit better. They'll be able to record things there and then share those via the web or through DVD, whatever. But June 9, 10, and 11, if you want to find all of our events, by the way, they're at the right-hand column of the website, gilberthouse.org, or you can go through the More tab on our app, which will lead you to the upcoming events link. In July, we'll be in... and I need to correct myself, and I'll have to do this on Unraveling Revelation again. It's Brookville, Ohio. I keep saying Brookline, Ohio, which I'm sure is very nice. If it existed.
It's on the northwest side of Dayton.
Yes.
It's on the website. You'll see it.
Yes, it is correct on the website. Brookville, Ohio, suburban Dayton, Harvest Revival Center. That's Pastor Neil Peterson's church. But Dr. Mike Spalding is the host, and joining us there, L.A. Marzulli, Dr. Michael Lake, Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, David Hevner, Coach Dave Daubenmeyer, Pastor Casper McLeod, Kenny C., Vicki Joy Anderson, Tom Dunn, many others. So you'll find that at the website. That's July 28th and 29th of 2023.
It's, I think, one of the greatest gatherings of just ministers of the gospel that are in our sort of milieu. Mm-hmm. It's an amazing gathering. I mean, Mike got all this group together.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention Dr. Greg Reed, who's life experience as a victim of SRA, who now is teaching spiritual warfare, training law enforcement on how to recognize occult crimes and things like that.
He is incredible. You'll want to talk to him if you ever have any questions about that sort of thing. Vicki Joy Anderson also can talk to you. So can Tom Dunn and his team. Right.
So if you're dealing with spiritual warfare, want some good, solid information. Well, David Hevner, too, from what he's seen inside the belly of the beast in Hollywood.
Oh, my gosh, yes. Yeah. Yes, they're amazing. So you want to go to that.
Yeah. The more information on that at gothereforeconference.com. Gothereforeconference.com.
And if we've left anybody out, please forgive us because it is
David Paxton, Randy
amazing
Conway.
List of presenters.
Right. So that's what's coming up tomorrow morning, of course, the Gilbert House Fellowship, our Bible study, as we dig back into the book of 2 Samuel and 1 Chronicles. Yes?
Speaking of Mike Spalding, he is on Unraveling Revelation right now.
That is right.
The shows that are running right now.
So check out Unraveling Revelation, again, at our app or unravelingrevelation.tv. You can also find the link at, gilberthouse.org. Top left there, got the YouTube video. His new
probably
book.
At IMDb for all I know.
It probably is. Letters from Jesus is his new book. It's about the letters to the 7 ecclesias of Revelation 2 and 3 and what those letters say to us today. So a good series just beginning on Unraveling Revelation for the next several weeks.
Boy, we've blathered on and on.
We have, and we thank you for letting us fill your ear holes. And until next time, I'm Derek Gilbert.
I am Sharon Gilbert. Bye-bye, everybody.
PID Radio is an outreach of Gilbert House Ministries, released under Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. Follow us online, PIDradio.com, Twitter @PIDradio, or by downloading our free app, PIDradio.com/app or gilberthouse.org/app. Join us each week for our Bible study, the Gilbert House Fellowship.